Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on your location, as we have people from all across the world. Welcome to another session of the Data series. We are thrilled to be with you here this evening for a session full of action-packed learning. I, Shishir, from Data Analytics team at Analytics Vidhya, will be the moderator of this session. For those who have joined us for the first time, a brief introduction about the DataHour sessions conducted by Analytics Vidhya. The DataHour is a series of sessions led by top industry experts, which help us to enable deeper discussion and conversation with our cherished community. The DataHour is definitely going to be a fun way to understand the concepts of data science from leading players in the data science domain. We are hopeful that these sessions are going to be a great source of enrichment and value adding for our community members. Now on to our session today, which is about artificial intelligence in retail. In this DataHour, you'll get to know the use cases of AI ML in the retail industry. On to our presenter. In this session of DataHour, we have with us Dr. Shantha Mohan, who is a mentor and project guide at the Integrated Innovation Institute of Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, USA. She co-founded Retail Solution Incorporated, a pioneering retail analytics company based in California, and ran its global product development team. Ma'am, the virtual stage is all yours.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here to this webinar to talk to you about artificial intelligence in retail. What I want to say is that you have all joined from many parts of the world, and I hope you are here to learn about what kind of problems exist in retail, what are the opportunities, and then be able to apply artificial intelligence and machine learning to those problems. I'm told many of you are new to the data science field. In this data hour, we will talk about how the retail data is important to addressing many of the challenges that are present in retail, which, by the way, means to sell in small quantities to the ultimate consumer and the industry of such selling. So it has got several stakeholders. They are the suppliers, those who provide the products and services, and those who sell those services, the retailers, and then consumers of these services, you and me, the general population. And by applying machine learning and artificial intelligence, we can find the flows and behaviors of all people, the patterns, and then we can use those to make the processes more efficient, make the customer more happy, and artificial intelligence can help the retailers and the suppliers do all of that and benefit the end consumer. So that's what we are going to talk about today. And I will focus mainly on the use cases. I'm not going to talk about, which kind of machine learning to use where and so on. That would be a different topic altogether. So here we are really only concentrating on the retail use cases. So I've divided the session into these topics. First, we will look at the retail industry landscape because it is as wide as the world, and we will see how challenges are different depending on where you are. The importance of data in creating the AI ML solutions to address the problems. And we will look at the different use cases. And then I will conclude with some words on responsible retailing and how machine learning and artificial intelligence can help. And then a short presentation on the future of AI ML in retail, very short one, looking ahead to say what's going to happen in the future. So let's begin by looking at the retail industry landscape and challenges. When I look at the landscape, I see three dimensions. There could be many more, but these are the most important ones. One that has to do with the geography. Where are you in the world? The location. That determines the kind of challenges you face and what is more important in that particular part of the world. Second, products. What kind of products are you talking about when we talk about retail? That has its implications for the kind of problems that exist, the kind of solutions one should think about, and then channels. How do these products get to the customer, and what that supply chain creates in terms of its unique challenges. So when we look at the retail industry landscape, I mentioned that the kind of challenges that you face in the retail industry depends on where you are. Now, retail industry has evolved over the years, depending on which part of the world you are in. In the West, you have had all kinds of technological advances all the way back in terms of beginning with the cash register, credit cards, and then the electronification of cash registers, the creation of information systems, of course, then the World Wide Web and e-commerce, and then more recently, social media. Now, these advances have made a lot of difference to the Western world, the developed world. And as early as 1962, when Walmart first opened this big box retailing, things are never the same. It's no longer the mom and pop store, though they do exist even today, and they exist side by side with these big box stores. Now, in the developing world, in many parts of the world, the big box retailing is more of a recent phenomenon. And even today in India, the Kirana shops are the lifeblood of retail. And you would find these Kirana shops or the corner shops all throughout India. And I'm told there are close to 20 million Kirana shops in India. And over 90% of the fast moving consumer goods sales happens via these stores. I still remember the corner store that I used to go to when I was growing up in India in the 60s. And I remember what a personalized treatment I got when I went to those stores. And the e-commerce now has taken off quite a bit in places like India. And I think that there are many of you here from places like Nigeria, of which I don't know too much about. So I will be focusing quite a bit on, when I say the developed world and the developing world, mostly US where I live, and India where I grew up. And so we can look at what's happening at the different parts of the world and see how each location has its own challenges and how AI and ML can help solve them. Now, e-commerce has taken over quite, in a big way in most of the countries, but it's still not quite as much as your traditional brick and mortar stores. And in fact, if you see in China, the e-commerce trade is almost half of the total sales, according to this report from eMarketer. It's 46.3%, whereas in the US, it's only 16.1% or so, and India is way further down here. And again, e-commerce creates its own challenges and creates its own opportunities. the location or the geography determines the kind of focus that the retailers have on servicing the customers. In the West, as in US, the focus has been on automating the stores. In other words, the labor is expensive, and how can we keep costs under control by automating the store to have very little human presence. And this is the reason behind the Amazon Go store, and the other Western parts of the world are following suit, and we will see this use case further down. Now, in countries that are developing, the focus is more on how do we make products and services available to customer more efficiently for a better price, and how do we get the goods to very remote locations more reliably and fast in a speedy manner. So the focus is different, though more often than not, technologists kind of look at what's happening in the developed part of the world and want to bring it to the other parts of the world too. And that's okay. It might take a little bit longer to implement them, but still it's the progress is good for all of us. I said the other dimension is the products. Now, the kind of products and services we get determine quite a bit the kind of problems and challenges that face the retailers and the suppliers. And you see the white goods are the ones that we buy very few times during our lifetime. The washing machines, the washer and dryer and refrigerator and so on. The product characteristics determine how the supply chain is structured and what kind of issues that arise, compared to something like fresh food, which is perishable and has a short life span. And how do you get such products to the customer quickly so that the freshness is maintained and the shelf life is contained? And then we have apparel, where we have consumers who have been trained by these suppliers to buy a new fashion every season or every couple of years. And the kind of problems that arise in that particular sector of retail is very, very different, because what they are concerned about is to be able to service the customer with the latest and the greatest. But at the same time, the kind of problems that arise because of that is wastage. For example, somebody may buy something, especially today over internet, and the size may not be quite exactly the one they had thought it would be, and so they have to return it. So returns are a big problem in this industry and in this particular sector of retail. And also they have the need to keep innovating in terms of design and production. Then we have the luxury goods market, where the focus is on quality and the focus is on customer experience. So one does everything they can in order to meet the customer expectation in that industry. Then we have goods like the automobile, which come with its own ecosystem of parts manufacturing and parts distribution and parts selling. Finally, we have these virtual products, things like financial instruments, things like Netflix streaming, and they have their own requirement in terms of how to meet customer demands and how to keep the customer engaged and how to promote and so on. In all of these, the ultimate aim is to be able to provide goods and services as efficiently as possible and maintain the customer base to keep them from going away from you to some other retailer. And all of these present interesting business challenges, and therefore the kind of solutions that you can develop with artificial intelligence and machine learning are really very, very, very vast. I mentioned channels, and the channels are really three main types. One of them is the traditional brick and mortar stores. So you have the likes of Walmart and Costco and IKEA. And today, even Amazon, which started out as e-commerce retailer, but now have brick and mortar stores because they have realized the importance of having your physical presence in order to keep yourself in front of the customer, as well as address some of the challenges that arise when you are doing e-commerce. Then the other channel is the e-commerce, and the trend was started by Amazon, and it has caught on by those who had brick and mortar stores such as Walmart. And of course, eBay was already online presence. And then in the parts of the world, such as China, you have Alibaba.com. And e-commerce has its own advantages and challenges as well. And the trick in crafting the AI ML solution is to understand the advantages and then to address the challenges. Now we have an entirely new type of channel, which is the direct-to-consumer brands. These brands compete with very well-known brands that are provided by the big suppliers such as Procter & Gamble and Nestle and Unilever, and all of them cater to the consumer directly. And what's the benefit? You get to know the consumer as well as some of the retailers who are providing the product to them. And the trend is to be able to understand your customer so you can serve them well. And the whole idea behind AI ML, having that data and being able to discover about your customer is very, very appealing. And these brands, the direct-to-consumer brands, have grown quite a bit in the recent years. Let me pause a little bit and look at the Q&A to see whether there's anything I should be answering. Who needs to care about AI and machine learning in a retail business? It is the retailer as well as the supplier and even those who are in the middle, because every one of them can benefit by looking at the data and discovering new ideas and also understanding how best to use that data to service the customer efficiently. For example, for retailer, it may be, how do I keep the products on the shelf so that I don't have an out of stock? So I can tune my supply chain process to get the products to the consumer when they need it. For the supplier, it's understanding the customer's needs and be able to provide products that meet those needs. And then, of course, in the middle, the distributor, they want to be able to get the product from retailer to the supplier. And so how best to do it, how efficiently to do it. And in today's world, how we can do that responsibly without increasing the carbon footprint. The next question is how small retail stores can compete with e-commerce portal. Will AI ML help create the difference? Absolutely, absolutely. And small retail stores today have platforms just similar to Shopify. I am sure in India there must be platforms which cater to small retailers to host their particular product pages. And so they should be able to compete. And how do they take advantage of AI and ML? And because they are on these platforms, they get to see the data of people who are buying their products. So from that perspective, they are as powerful as somebody like an Amazon or a Walmart who have their own portal. And more solution providers are adding on to Shopify in terms of analytics capabilities, and they will be able to make use of them. Can we use deep learning in other planets? I have absolutely no answer for that question. How financial instruments come under retail? So retail is a word, as I said, which means getting goods and services to the end consumer. Financial instruments are very much a service, and selling insurance, selling investments, so on. These are all also products that the retailers, the big financial companies and investment bankers sell, and selling them have the same kind of issues as goods that you buy, like a washing machine. By that I mean you have to know your customer, and you have to know how best to promote your services such that the consumer will buy from you rather than somebody else. So in all aspects, it is retail, but it is retail of a virtual goods. What about live food like chicken? I think that you can consider a live chicken as something that is actually manufactured. So if you are somebody who is growing, who has a farm and who's raising chickens, you are the supplier. So from a retail perspective, you consider yourself as a supplier and you ask yourself, how efficiently can I raise this chicken? How efficiently can I get the chicken to the retailer? And how do I process the chicken? Do I sell live chickens, or do I sell chickens that have been already processed in order to send to a shop that can sell chicken meat? So the problems are that of a supplier, and you will deal with it that way. And there are solutions that you can use to address them. The retail sector, specifically grocery stores in India, is not organized and run by some lower middle class of population. What impact e-commerce will create on these persons who earn from the small stores? What impact it will have on the economy of India? As I mentioned, the Kirana stores are mom and pop stores. They are run by families, individuals. And the first step is really to modernize them. And I think the big retailers like Reliance, they are helping these Kirana stores to modernize, understand their customers, even collect data. And so it's, slowly it'll get there, and they will get the benefit from, modernizing and understanding the data. Can you provide an example for DTC? So, okay, so in the US at least, and I'm sure there are DTCs in India as well. If you think about razor blades, there are e-commerce vendors who sell razor blades. It's called Dollar Shave, and it's a website where you can go sign up and have these delivered to you, at periodic intervals. So it's subscribing to that service of getting the razor blades. So that's one example. And how do you differentiate between e-commerce? DTC is also part of e-commerce, but the big difference is those who are the providers of the goods. In other words, who we call as suppliers in normal retail language, are also providing the goods as if they are a retailer directly to the consumer. And the benefit is that they are able to understand the customer much better because they get to collect the data about the customer. And it's not a new concept, because if you look at the likes of Procter & Gamble or Unilever, through the many years since e-commerce came into being, they all started having their own website, promoting their own brands and selling through them. So in a sense, they have been trying to do what now the DTCs do so very well in terms of putting the brand out there. And when you control both the creation of the product and the delivery of the product, you get to have many, many advantages. And that's what the DTCs have to have that presence. Can we optimize supply chain and make a customized product price as per region using AI and ML? Absolutely. And this happens even today on Amazon. For example, when I buy the product, they know where I am. I live in California, and the prices they show me could be entirely different from the prices they show to somebody who's in, for example, Indiana, Midwest. And all that is possible because the machine learning models are built to consider the geographies, consider the demographics, consider the time of day when the sale happens, and then be able to serve a price which is a dynamic price. So it is very much possible. Should retail, supply chain, and e-commerce be treated as different domains in terms of AI? Yes and no. They are all connected. However, the kind of problems one would think about in terms of supply chain itself is very different from when you're talking about e-commerce and how best to provide the goods and services to the consumer so that they are delighted and they come back again and again to your website. So they're all connected because it's all about retail, but the specific problems would be very, very different. So to give you an example, when we talk about supply chain, one of the biggest problems in supply chain is out of stock. Out of stock has been a problem that has been present, ever present, all the way from the beginning of time of retail, is that a customer comes to the store or comes to the website and they are looking for a specific product, but it's not there. It's not there because either the ordering policies are not good enough to make sure that the product got reordered when it was time for filling the shelf, or the product is misplaced. It's kept in some corner of the store and never brought to the shelf to fill the shelf. Many, many reasons why. So that particular problem, a supply chain problem, is very, very different from the problem of making the customer happy with all kinds of suggestions for what kind of product they should buy, and providing it at a price which is very attractive to the customer. So they're different problems, but they're all tied together in some way or the other. For example, if I keep finding out of stock in the store again and again, I probably will say, okay, this store is not good, and I may go to a neighboring store. And same thing with the e-commerce. I may say, this retailer's website is not giving me what I need. I'm going to go somewhere else. I may go to, if I'm always buying in Amazon, I may go to Walmart, maybe. So I think I'm going to stop here answering the questions. I'll come back to this. Let me go through some of the presentation first. So we talked about channels, and now we come to the importance of data. After all, this is data hour, and so we should talk about data, because without data, AI and ML will not happen. Without data, you can't hope to understand what you have, first of all, and then how can you make it better. So in order to do that, you have to be looking at data, you have to collect it, you have to make sure that the data that you collected is relevant, and then apply analytics in order to understand what you can do with the insights that you find from the data. In retail, more than anywhere else, collaboration is key in order to get the benefit. And I say collaboration because each entity that is a main stakeholder in a retail space owns part of the data. For example, retailer has the point of sale data. They have the inventory data. They understand the customers, which is a more recent phenomena because they are able to see their buying patterns. And this retail data belongs to the retailer because they are the ones who are actually doing the selling and collecting the data about all these different things. The supplier, on the other hand, has the product data. They manufacture or they produce the product, so they understand the product characteristics. They understand how to position the product in terms of their benefits compared to their competitors, for example. They also have the data that uniquely identifies a product. And this data, more often called a master data, has to be there in order for both retailers and the suppliers to make sense of any insights that you get from the data. So it's not enough to just have the transaction data of the sale, though you can get some insights from it. But in order to really understand your customers and the kind of products that they buy, and to then use that knowledge to promote the product, you really have to marry these two data types. And then, of course, we have the e-commerce, which again, as we talked about, both the retailer and the supplier could have an impact with their e-commerce site. And the kind of data that you can gather there is much cleaner, mainly because it's all through your mouse click and your browsing that you get that data, compared to the data that you find from the brick and mortar stores, where a human still mans the cash register, and more often than not, there could be errors that are introduced in that process, which makes it difficult for the data to be used very effectively. So collaboration is important, and collaboration then gives rise to benefit for everybody, for the retailer, for the supplier, and then for the consumer as well, because the retailers get to provide things to the consumer in a more efficient way, reducing their costs. And the suppliers get the benefit because they can understand how consumers are reacting to their products, which products sell better than others, which products are more useful than others. And consumers benefit because when the costs are reduced, hopefully it's passed on to the consumer, but not always. The types of data that we deal with in retail is not that much different from other domains. There is the structured data. These have existed for a while now. You have if you're a Kirana shop, maybe the first step you did was to put things in a spreadsheet, perhaps. And then, of course, for the big retailers, it's the relational database, which holds the transaction data and the customer data. And these traditional data, which is structured, is easy to deal with, and we have been dealing with them for the longest time. We have traditional information systems that deal with it, but with the increase in data growing to petabytes and more, it becomes very difficult to deal with them in a traditional way in order to get any insights. So the AI and ML are able to look at this data very efficiently and be able to derive insights through using some of these models. Then, of course, we have the unstructured data, and these come in the form of, for example, emails to customer support, which says, hey, I bought this product, it's not doing what I thought it would do, and so on. And then we have all the social media data where the customers who like your product give it a thumbs up, or they don't like it. There are influencers on social media who promote your products, and you can understand how they are improving the sale of the product. And these data, they're all unstructured. They're all in all different types of forms. And so, in the recent times, we have had to deal with this type of data. And then we come to today, where everything is about Internet of Things. So you get data at such fast pace, at such volumes, that you have to make sure your systems are set up to take that data in and then be able to process them efficiently in order to get insights from them. When we talk about data, one principle applies, and that is garbage in, garbage out. And if your data is not good enough to derive insights, you might as well forget about getting the data and collecting it and storing it and spending enormous amount of effort making sense of it. Now, in the early days, it used to be the 3 V's of data: volume, variety, and velocity. Volume is about the size of the data, and over time, we have seen how much the volume of data has increased. I mean, even as individuals, we are dealing with so much data, so much information, that it becomes necessary to do house cleaning once in a while in order to keep the data contained, because storage is not infinite, even though it's become very cheap. So volume is a consideration. How much data should you keep? how long should you keep your data? And the variety, as we talked about in the previous slide, data is of all different types. How do you deal with that variations in data? How do you harmonize the data and make sense of it? And then the velocity, the speed at which the data comes at you, you should be able to deal with it and be able to turn it into insights. And for some problems, it would be important to have the data be available immediately. And for others, perhaps you can wait. And a good example would be that of somebody who is looking at a product on a website, and the retailer wants to show them products that might be useful to them, what we call the recommendations. And for that, you have to be able to immediately understand, this is Shantha who's shopping, and she has shopped for X, Y, and Z in the last 10 months. And so here's some information for her. So that's very different from somebody who is dealing with a brick and mortar store where you have thousands of stores from which you have to gather data in order to make sense of how well a product is selling in what part of the world. So different use cases, different needs for velocity. More recently, we have expanded this 3 V's of data into 10 V's of data. So we talked about volume, velocity, variety, and then we have all these other characteristics: veracity, variability, value, volatility, visibility, viscosity, and vulnerability. I would refer you to this paper, which is on the website. I'm not going to go into details because we are already at 7:40 or so. So let me go through some of the other slides I have quickly, and then perhaps maybe we can spend the time answering questions. So I said, let's talk about some retail use cases. So the first one that I want to talk about is the cashierless store. As I mentioned earlier, in the Western world, the focus is all on automating, making the product available in a frictionless experience to the users, where they can walk into a store and walk out with the goods. And Amazon Go made this innovation where you have their app, Amazon app on your smartphone, you walk in, your identity is recognized, and you can pick up products from the shelf, put it back if you didn't want it, and at the end of the day, walk out without ever having spoken to a human or stop at a cash register, no queues. And all this is made possible because of a combination of technologies. The store is equipped with cameras on its ceilings, which detect every movement, and the shelves, which are fitted with sensors, which can detect the weight when a product is taken off or put back. And a combination of these technologies then make it possible with the associated AI system to be able to make this experience of automated store work. 7-Eleven is not far behind. They first introduced the cashierless store to their employees at the headquarters in Irving, Texas, and they learn from it, and then they can apply it to the rest of the world. And you can imagine when Amazon Go came up with this solution, you can see how 7-Eleven, which is a convenience store, would get really worried about their existence. And that it's what I would call forced innovation. They have to innovate in order to survive in the business. Aldi is a global retailer, and they have also implemented this cashierless store. And it's possible by a technology from the company called i5. I mentioned that because the founders are from CMU, my university, Carnegie Mellon University. They came up with the idea when they were doing their work as a researcher. And this has one added thing that I noticed, which is if you want to buy alcohol, they will use facial recognition if you allow them to. So if you say, I am buying alcohol, you go ahead, use my facial recognition to know that I am old enough. They can do so, or they can opt out. They can say, just I will show you my ID. And then I came across this water sale in India, Cochin. This store, which is very similar to the store from Amazon Go, opened, I believe, in 2018, but I don't know where it is today, because after the initial announcement that I saw, I haven't seen much about it. So perhaps somebody from India will know what's going on with that. There are these stores which sell apparel and beauty products, and the way they approach the challenges that they have is with AI-enabled smart mirrors, which allow you to try on different products and purchase one that fits you the best. Same thing with the lipstick and makeup. All these make it very possible to not have to physically apply some of these things in order to try out. And the results are that you get a much better, faster sale and really a high uptick in sales. E-commerce stores use AI and ML in many different ways. One of them is to do with the chatbot. The chatbots used to be rule-based early on, but now they are being enhanced with AI to be able to handle the conversations better using natural language processing, natural language understanding. And the text-to-text type of thing we usually do has now moved on to voice-to-text. And then the most recent innovation has been the use of digital humans to be able to actually open up your smartphone or your browser and be able to talk to a digital human who not only understands your voice and its intonations, they are able to see your face and be able to respond appropriately. Then we have the recommender systems that I mentioned earlier. When you go to a website, they usually will tell you, oh, yeah, you're looking for this, but how about this product or that product? And that happens because of AI and ML. The systems use something called either a collaborative filtering, where they're not only looking at your buying behavior, but also the behavior of similar users, demographically or location-wise, and then be able to recommend another product to you so you can buy that. And then there is a content-based filtering, which doesn't involve the other users, but your buying behavior. They can go back to your history and understand how often you bought a product or what kind of similar products that you were interested in, and then be able to recommend that to you. A better system combines the two, the collaborative and content-based filtering, and recommends products to you. This reminds me of a physical store, our neighborhood store that we used to go to, where the shopkeeper actually knew you, knew your preferences, knew what you might or might not like, and provided that product to you. Now, what we are trying to do here is to do that at a scale that is unimaginable across the world, across multiple products and keep that all straight in their system. Supply chain management is a topic in itself. It's vast. And in the old paradigm, you had the supplier who sent the product to the retailer through maybe a distributor, and then the retailer sold the product to the customer. But in the new paradigm, it's omni-channel. So you have the supplier who might actually deliver the product directly to the customer. You may have it sent to a distributor and the retailer who finally delivers it to the customer. You can sell it on your website and you can collect it, and the customer can collect it at a store near them, or they can have it shipped to them, or they can have it picked up at the curbside. So all these variations in how the buyer gets the product gives rise to several supply chain problems, some of which has to do with demand planning, inventory management and managing out of stock, the distributed order management, because when you are promising a product to the customer that I will give it to you, I'll ship it to you by such and such date, you have to kind of let the ML system tell you what is the best way to deliver it. And then of course, how you would deliver it, the last mile delivery problem, and how do you manage the returns. All of these are supply chain management problem, and every one of them can benefit by using AI and ML. Now we come to responsible retailing. Now with the coming of e-commerce, it has added to a retailer's carbon footprint. And the carbon footprint is because of you and me to a large extent, because we are spoiled now. We want the product now when we want it. So I go to the website, I say, oh, I need this Tide liquid and I need it tomorrow. So I say, hey, send it to me tomorrow. And without a thought to what that means to the carbon footprint. Because every time you order a product, they have to package it, they have to ship it, and decide how best to get it to you for the delivery. And the way now we are starting to look at it is that if you were to club all the items that you buy and have it be delivered in one delivery, think about how much you will reduce in terms of the carbon footprint. So the responsible retailing means that retailers can encourage in-store pickup. So buy on the website, but come to the store and pick it up. Minimize the total customer travel by having pickup locations that are closer, perhaps, and reduce the number of trips that a customer has to make, and reduce the amount of shipping you have to do by shipping it from a local store. In other words, the local stores become distribution points. So all of these are solutions that a retailer can do with the help of AI and ML. And one example I have here is of UPS, which does the delivery, and they have an AI and ML system that allows for discovering the most efficient way for their drivers to deliver the products. And that kind of focus on reducing the carbon footprint is a responsible retailing. And if you think about it, AI and ML can actually help reduce the carbon footprint by looking at all the different ways it can help in these different domains. So what's the future? Future is very, very bright. There is going to be so many new technologies that come into play. Edge computing is one, 5G and 6G, the ability to process data faster, closer to the edge, as we call it. And the drones helping the last mile delivery, managing inventory at warehouses with robots where humans can be there to help, but not be necessarily the ones who handle all the products, and monitoring the stores. And the voice technology has taken on so big that voice to text type capability, the natural language processing can all help in terms of making it possible to do what retailers hope to do. And I hope that people keep in mind that the one solution for all geographies doesn't work. So we have to be very cautious about the kind of effort we spend in implementing AI and ML solutions. I think I'm going to stop here and go back to the QA. We have just 4 minutes left. Let's see. I will come from the more recent one. How to convert SWOT analysis of a retail business as a ML problem. As a beginner, I want to understand how to handle such business problems. Is creating hypothesis a solution? Is there any other way? A simple way to do this is really not the, yes, SWOT analysis can be used. You can look at your business and say, what are my pain points and what value I can get from AI and ML solutions, and what would be the cost. First of all, you have to have data. So if you don't have data, forget about using AI and ML, go to your traditional method of implementing solutions. But you really have to start with understanding what are your pain points, and SWOT analysis seems like a good one. You have to know the domain. You have to know what are the pressing problems in that particular situation. How can we analyze customer behavior in data science? Again, you go to the data, right? You have to, first of all, collect data over time, and then you have to start looking at the data in an exploratory way. So machine learning is excellent for diagnosing what is happening with your domain, with your data. And so start with applying some machine learning models that are unsupervised learning in order to discover what you see in the data. And once you do that, then you can craft some solutions, some way of dealing with that data. What kind of output do you want to see? And you can create models, do some feature engineering and so forth. By web scraping, can we collect data? Yes, you can. You can web scrape the e-commerce sites and get some data, but that data, you're not getting the underlying personal or customer data. You're getting data from what you see. This is especially attractive for social media sites where you can actually see the likes and the dislikes and be able to understand what's popular, what is not popular. When we speak about retail, we have techniques such as RFM analysis. Not technically, what other such techniques? Well, there are so many technologies available, and it depends on what is it that you are trying to do. As I mentioned earlier, automating a store requires so many different technologies, right? So vision technology and IoT and so on. So it really, really depends on what you're looking at. So once you know what techniques you want, what kind of problems you have, then you do some research. The web is such a great place with rich information that you can actually see somebody else doing something like what I want to do, and then follow that thought. How can ML improve the recycle industry for reducing the carbon footprint? First of all, you have to know what you're trying to do. So in the recycle industry, you have to collect data to understand how recycling is happening, what kind of mechanisms are more efficient in terms of recycling, and then you can apply it. So for example, in the fashion industry, they have identified from the data that many of the discarded garment waste can be recycled in order to make products from it. And it's like a status symbol now to wear clothes that have been made from recycled material. So again, I would say, I always go back to the fundamental, which is what is the requirement? And then you have to analyze what are the solutions that can be applied to it. Why can prices of a product service differ due to geographical factors as a result of AI? It's not the result of AI. What you're trying to do is to use AI to produce prices that are attractive to that part of the world. So for example, if I'm living in the Midwest and I shop at local stores usually, and the prices of products there are X, Y, and Z, when I am buying it on e-commerce site, it needs to be attractive to me to buy from that website. So the people who serve up these dynamic pricing have so much data about what is attractive to a person living in a certain area, and then they are able to serve up that dynamic pricing. I think we are over time, aren't we?
Yes, ma'am. We can take a few more questions, maybe 1 or 2 questions more.
Okay.
And not an issue.
All right. As of now, only the marketplace has massive data collected from both buyers and sellers. Should a buyer and seller of the marketplace develop their own pattern detection algorithms as the marketplace develops algorithms for their own profit? Okay. I want to simplify this question. So for example, if the retailer has data about the transactions, what sold when and in what quantity and so on, how do sellers, how do the suppliers get benefit from it? It's by collaboration, as I mentioned. And it is possible that they get the data from the retailer and they can develop their own algorithms to identify what works for them and what their goals are. So they can have their own algorithms that work on the same set of data, but for different purposes. It's very, very possible. So my company that I co-founded was in the business of taking data from the retailer and taking data from the supplier and marrying them together in order to find the insights. And these insights were provided to both the sellers and the suppliers. It was retail solutions algorithms that made it possible. But there are some suppliers who wanted to get that data and actually use it in their data warehouse, their data lakes, and apply their own algorithms and so on to detect what they wanted to detect. And in doing so, what they would do is to actually add their own proprietary data that they don't expose to anybody else. And this way they can have their own algorithms as well. So in the traditional manner, it's algorithms, but now with AI and ML, because they get to have that data in its raw form, they can actually do whatever they want to do with it. So it is possible. And usually the data is either sent directly from retailer to the supplier because they have that agreement, the data exchange agreement, or they can get it through middle service providers like retail solutions in order to process the data. Retailers and suppliers processes are not structured and time-bound organized. So how can we implement AI application in the environment? I think that there are processes in place that deal with data in terms of incoming data and cleaned and harmonized data. And as I mentioned, retail solutions is in that business of dealing with the suppliers and the retailers and to make the data available to both, that is harmonized and clean and able to get insights from it. So I would say that it's available. It's not like it's not structured or time bound. It is. You can identify data, when did it come in, and how long has it been since it came in, and so on. Can you tell on high level how the algorithms like linear, they're all used? And again, really depends on where you are in trying to solve what problem, and you should be able to use one or the other depending on the kind of problem that you're trying to solve. Piyush says, understand there is a vast implementation of recommender systems. What kind of implementation is done for supervised and unsupervised DL models in retail industry? I can't give you specifics simply because I am not the person doing it. What I know about is all, heard through third parties. And as I mentioned, the internet is the place to go and do some research. You can easily find answers to what people are doing. And today, people like Amazon, people like Walmart, they all have websites that talk about the kind of solutions they are providing. And I would say, for the most part, the providers of cloud capabilities, the likes of AWS, Azure, and Google, they all have built-in solutions for you to try any of these supervised and unsupervised models that you can actually create with very little effort. And they also have the ability to onboard people who want to try it out. Students get to play free for a while at least on all these platforms. And each of them, and even IBM, they all have solutions in the AI and ML space where you can actually go and create models. Now, the question is data. Do you have the data to play with anything that you want to play with? And even there, you have a lot of different data sources that are available freely to the public. And I would say, you can start there and start to discover what's possible. And I think I already answered how AI and ML can help unorganized small scale Kirana stores.
Ma'am, unfortunately, we are running short of time. So
maximum,
we can take one more question. I think that will wrap up the session.
Which one do you want me to do? The last one from Richard. We are seeing the growth of self-service business analytic tools like Power BI and Tableau. Do you see a possibility that such tools will play a leading role in AI ML space? Now, you have to separate the problem of analytic tools from the underlying algorithms. So it's underlying algorithms and creating insights is the role of AI and ML, and how they are manifested for the user to look at is the role of Power BI and Tableau. That said, these tools are already coming up with their own capability in terms of modeling with AI and ML. So they are all trying to make use of the machine learning capability in order to provide these visualization, these insights. And as time goes by and things like edge technology become very ubiquitous, you would find more and more of such capabilities.
So one question Giri wants to ask is that, is there any great ways for getting data sets on retail?
There is. I have to go find it and send it to you. But I think that it's not, I don't know how useful it is. I have not used it. Okay. But I'm happy to send it to you and you can make it available. I'll try to find it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. So on behalf of Analytics Vidhya, I would like to thank you for sharing your experience. I'm sure our audience found it insightful as well. So hopefully we can conduct more such session with you in future. So thanks a lot for sharing your experience in this session of the data series.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to the audience for attending and listening to me the past hour and so. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am. So this webinar, this data session ends here.